They called me a failure at family dinner, but the next day, my dad's boss bowed her head and called me ma'am. My name's Natalie Williams. I'm 28 years old, and I'm a colonel in the U.S. Army. I know those two facts don't usually go together, but neither does my life. 5 years ago, I left my small Montana hometown behind with nothing but a duffel bag and a head full of doubt. My family never believed in my choice. They thought joining the military was something people did when they had no other options. They said I was wasting my potential, ruining my future. They told me no man would want a woman who spent her life in uniform, and maybe worse than the words was the silence. No letters, no calls, no "we're proud of you," just absence. So I went forward without them. I rose fast. I worked harder than I ever thought I could, and when the day came that I was promoted to colonel, one of the youngest in the Army's history, I didn't cry. I just looked down at that silver eagle in my hand and thought, I did this without them. But now, for the first time in 5 years, I was going back. The occasion, my father's company was hosting a formal dinner, and somehow through a mix of guilt and pressure, I'd been invited. I hadn't RSVP'd, I hadn't promised anything, but here I was 40 miles out from the house I grew up in, gripping the wheel like it might run off the road. In the passenger seat, tucked in my bag, was that same silver eagle. Tomorrow night, my dad's boss, who happens to be a retired major general, was going to be there. He knew who I was. He'd requested I attend. My family didn't. They had no clue what I'd become. To them, I was still the daughter who left to play soldier, still the failure, still the one who skipped college and broke the mold. But what they didn't know, what they were about to find out, is that I'm not the little girl they used to look down on. I'm not the mistake they whisper about at family reunions. I'm the woman they should have been bragging about. And tomorrow, in a room full of suits and polite smiles, the truth is going to land like a bomb. Growing up in Montana, my family revolved around one thing: my dad's career at Pinnacle Defense Systems. He worked there for over 30 years, starting as an engineer and slowly rising to a senior executive position. Every family milestone, every dinner table conversation somehow circled back to that company. He lived for it, and in return he expected us to live for it too. My brother Gregory, 2 years older than me, was the chosen one, the golden boy. He was smart, polished, polite, and most importantly, he followed the script. College, business school, internship at Dad's company. He was practically born wearing a name tag. Me? I was the rebel, or at least that's what they called me. I was the smart one who asked too many questions, who read history books and argued about ethics at the dinner table. When I turned down a job offer after graduation and joined the Army through an ROTC scholarship, it was like I'd committed a crime against the family name. My mom cried. My dad went silent. Gregory just shook his head like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. And ever since then, my military career, no matter how successful, has been treated like an embarrassing family secret. The night I came home, it was like stepping into a time capsule that still refused to acknowledge who I'd become. The front door creaked the same way. The walls still held our childhood photos, but not a single picture of me in uniform. Not from my graduation, not from my commissioning ceremony, not from my promotion to colonel. My old bedroom was still painted pale yellow with a corkboard of high school soccer ribbons. My mom greeted me with a half-hearted, "You made it," and went right back to setting the table. When she smiled, it didn't reach her eyes. That night at dinner, the whole family was gathered. My parents, Gregory and his wife Megan, my cousin Tiffany. Everyone dressed like they were going to a corporate networking event. My mom poured wine like we were celebrating something, probably Gregory's latest title. She went on and on about his promotion to senior project manager, how he was now managing a team of 12. She beamed as she told Tiffany's story, how she just closed a multi-million-dollar finance deal and got flown out to San Francisco for meetings. I listened. I nodded. I swallowed the bitterness. When the topic turned to me, it wasn't with curiosity. It was with that same tone you use when checking on an old classmate who dropped off the map. My dad squinted and said, "Still a captain or whatever?" He didn't even know I had been promoted twice past that rank. I didn't correct him. I just nodded, like I always had. Then Gregory leaned back, all smug confidence, and said, The military's basically a backup plan, right? Like, if you can't make it in the real world. I could feel my stomach tighten. My mom sighed and added, "We always thought you'd do something big, Natalie. You were so bright. It's just such a shame." I looked around that table and realized they still saw me as a failure. Not despite my uniform, but because of it. I'd led troops in real operations, managed million-dollar logistics, mentored young officers, but to them, it wasn't success. It wasn't something they could brag about at country club brunch. My dad added, "Well, it's an honorable thing, of course, but you're capable of more. Real challenge, you know? That word real hit hard. What could be more real than commanding in high-pressure zones, training soldiers and holding responsibility that could cost lives if done wrong? But none of it mattered to them." I pushed my plate away, muttered an excuse, and went upstairs. Alone in my room, I reached into my bag and pulled out the Silver Eagle, the Colonel insignia. I ran my fingers over it slowly. They didn't need to believe in me anymore. Because tomorrow, they wouldn't have a choice. I hadn't told them I was now the official military liaison for a $1,200,000,000 0-cent defense contract, Project Aegis, between the U.S. Army and Pinnacle Defense Systems, my dad's own company. At 28, I held the rank of colonel, specializing in cybersecurity and threat detection, the exact field Pinnacle was investing millions into. My rapid promotion, from captain at 23 to major by 26, and now colonel, wasn't just luck or timing. It came from years of grit, field work, and a mission where I helped uncover a massive cyber breach targeting classified intelligence. It was Captain Eleanor Grant, now Brigadier General Grant, who saw what my family never could. She mentored me, challenged me, and when I cracked the case that saved hundreds of terabytes of top-secret data, she made sure Washington noticed. That's how I ended up here, chosen by the Pentagon to serve as the bridge between military command and corporate contractors. And the project I was overseeing? The very same one my brother Gregory bragged about leading, the one my father pinned his promotion hopes on. The night before the company event, I quietly hung my dress uniform behind the old clothes in my childhood closet. I'd sit through one last dinner, endure their judgment a bit longer. The house smelled like meatloaf and nostalgia. We sat in the dining room that still had floral wallpaper from the early 2000s. Gregory and Megan were in full show-off mode, bragging about managing a lean and mean team of innovators. My mom was glowing as she passed the wine, doting on Gregory like he'd just cured cancer. My dad, half listening while scrolling his emails, casually mentioned his big hopes for tomorrow's meeting. Shannon Murphy's coming, and some colonel liaison from the Pentagon, too, probably a desk jockey who'll be impressed by our operation. I almost choked on my water. My brother laughed. "Yeah, these military types just salute, nod, and sign papers. Real work gets done on our side." They had no idea they were mocking me to my face. My mom turned to me, fake curious. "And you, Natalie? Still in the same spot?" I smiled softly. "Things are good." I didn't bite. I didn't need to. I let them talk about Tiffany's new condo and Gregory's vacation in Maui. They didn't ask about my last deployment, or the soldiers I led, or the hours I'd spent drafting cybersecurity response protocols now used across 5 branches. I went to bed that night staring at the same plastic glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling from high school, and I thought about the day I told my dad I got an ROTC scholarship. His response was, "So you gave up?" When I commissioned, when I made captain, there was no card. When I led a team that stopped one of the largest digital infiltration attempts in Army history, they called it lucky timing. But Brigadier General Grant didn't. She flew in to pin my Silver Eagle herself 3 weeks ago in a small ceremony filled with generals and colleagues, but no family. And that was the moment I stopped needing them to believe in me. I just needed them to see me, really see me for who I'd become. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in full dress uniform. My shoes were shined, my ribbons perfect, every detail in place. The Silver Eagle on my chest caught the light, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the disappointing daughter, I felt like Colonel Natalie Williams. When I arrived at Pinnacle's massive glass headquarters, the security guards at the front recognized the rank immediately. "Colonel Williams," they said with a salute. "Pentagon liaison?" I nodded. "Yes, here for Project Aegis." They didn't just open the door, they escorted me through, past employees who lowered their voices as I passed, past framed photos of company milestones, none of which had included me until today. In the hallway outside the conference room, I came face to face with Gregory. His eyes landed on the silver eagle on my shoulder, and I swear I saw his soul leave his body for a second. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" he stammered, eyes wide like a kid caught cheating on a test. He didn't even try to hide the panic. Before I could answer, Dad appeared behind him, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and then something close to dread. "Why are you in uniform?" he asked, glancing around like someone might overhear. I kept my voice calm, steady. "I'm here for the project review. Meeting starts in 20. His jaw twitched. For the first time, I saw him unsure of how to treat me. Not like his daughter, more like someone he was suddenly afraid to underestimate. Inside the conference room, people were buzzing, staff placing water, techs checking the screen. When I stepped in, a young assistant dropped a folder. "Colonel, we weren't told you'd be here in person." I smiled slightly. Change of plans. I took my seat at the table, not across the room, not in the back, front and center, marked clearly Pentagon liaison. Dad and Gregory slid into seats across from me, still in disbelief. At exactly 9:00 d.a.m., Shannon Murphy, Pinnacle's legendary CEO, walked in. She was sharp, commanding, the kind of woman who made rooms quiet when she entered. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Colonel Williams, what a surprise. I thought we were doing a video call." I stood, shook her hand. "I was in town visiting family, figured I'd stop by." Shannon turned to the room, addressing everyone. "For those who don't know, Colonel Natalie Williams is our Pentagon liaison for Project Aegis. She oversees all technical and strategic decisions on behalf of the Department of Defense. She has final approval authority." The oxygen in the room changed. Dad's face dropped. Gregory sat frozen. The very woman they brushed off last night was now the one holding the keys to their entire project. The meeting started, and it was like watching two worlds crash. Engineers gave their reports, and every few minutes someone turned to me. "Colonel, is this aligned with DoD protocol? Colonel, can we get your feedback on the security approach?" I answered clearly, directly, offering notes, catching errors they didn't even notice. When Gregory's turn came, he stumbled through his slides, visibly sweating. He presented some flashy charts and buzzwords, but I didn't let that slide. "Can you clarify the encryption model your team's using for data transfer?" I asked. He fumbled. "We're still finalizing that," I nodded slowly. "Please submit the completed specs by Friday. This system is a national security asset. We can't afford uncertainty." Dad stared, stunned, as his disappointment corrected the golden boy in front of senior executives. Shannon closed the meeting with authority. "Colonel Williams will remain on site this week to conduct a full security review, full access, full cooperation. This project is critical." As people began to clear out, Shannon pulled me aside. "You're everything Eleanor said you were, and more. The way you handled that room? Impressive." I thanked her, feeling both proud and weirdly at peace. That's when Dad hovered nearby, clearly unsure what to do. Shannon didn't notice the tension. "By the way, is Colonel Williams your daughter?" she asked. Dad, caught, nodded slowly. "Yes, she is." "Well," Shannon said with raised eyebrows, "you never mentioned your daughter was the colonel overseeing our biggest contract." The implication hung in the air. "Why hadn't he?" Gregory suddenly blurted out. "Wait, you're the colonel everyone's been talking about?" His face was pale. "You're in charge?" I nodded. "Once. I've been overseeing Aegis since my promotion 6 months ago." Dad whispered, 6 months? Like I'd kept a family secret. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked him square in the eyes. "I tried. You never asked." Shannon sensed the awkward energy and shifted gears. "Colonel, could you brief the team on your role again?" I walked to the screen and gave a full breakdown of Aegis's scope over $1 billion in tech, security, and defense infrastructure. I explained how I evaluated contractor protocols, budget alignment, and personnel integrity. Everyone in that room listened, not because I was family, because I was the expert. Afterward, Dad invited me to his office. Mom was there now too, her face tight, eyes searching mine. Gregory leaned in the corner, arms crossed. The room was quiet. Then Dad said, "Why didn't you tell us you'd made it this far?" I looked at each of them. I did. I invited you to every ceremony. I called, I emailed, I shared my work. You just didn't care. Mom shifted. We didn't understand. We thought you were doing well, but we didn't know it was like this. Dad rubbed his face. Colonel is like a VP, maybe higher. I had no idea. Gregory muttered, "You outrank everyone in that room, even me." I stayed calm. I never needed to outrank you. I just needed you to see me. There was silence. Then, for the first time ever, my father stood and reached out his hand, not as a parent, but as a man trying to show respect. "Colonel Williams, I'm sorry I was wrong. I want to know your work if you'll let me." I took his hand, and it felt like something shifted. Not fixed, but shifted. Mom nodded. "We should have come to your ceremonies." Even Gregory softened. "I thought I was winning some race, but you're in a whole different league." I gave him a small smile. "It's not a race. We just chose different roads." He looked down. "You're better at yours." For the first time in years, we all laughed. Just a little. But it felt real. That night, over dinner at one of Dee Dee's finest rooftop restaurants, Shannon sat at the head of the table, casually asking my father questions about Montana, completely unaware she was part of a family reckoning in progress. The view of the Capitol was utterly glowing in the distance, but all I could see were the stunned expressions on my family's faces, still processing what they'd witnessed earlier. For once, I wasn't the daughter being measured against her brother. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the woman they were trying to understand. I watched Gregory stumble over polite questions for Shannon, trying to sound informed while clearly out of his depth. Dad kept glancing at me like he was seeing someone new, and maybe he was. 6 months later, everything had changed. I invited them to my condo in D.C., a clean-lined, sunlit place that felt nothing like the worn walls of our Montana home. It was filled with tokens of my journey, certificates, framed challenge coins, mission plaques, but the centerpiece wasn't mine. It was a photo Dad brought, already in a frame, me standing between General Eleanor Grant and Shannon Murphy, smiling in front of the Project Aegis mission flag. "Thought you might want this on your wall," he said, voice almost unsure, like he still wasn't convinced he had the right. I took it and smiled. "Thanks, Dad, I do." Mom came in with a warm apple pie, my favorite, and for once, her questions weren't surface level. She asked about my schedule, my command, the training program I'd designed that had already become policy. There wasn't pity in her voice, there was curiosity, respect. Gregory and Megan showed up late, holding a bottle of Cabernet and a peace offering in their eyes. "I actually used your security framework on my latest system build," he said, loosening his tie. "Everyone thought I was brilliant. I told them it was yours. Eventually." I laughed. "I'll take that." But it wasn't sarcasm, it was gratitude. I invited General Eleanor to join us that evening. She was the bridge between my past and present, the woman who saw something in me when my own family couldn't. She greeted everyone with grace and then launched into stories of our deployments, long nights rewriting security code under pressure, and how I'd saved millions in potential breaches through a new training protocol. Mom's fork paused mid-air. "We didn't know." "What you were doing?" I nodded. "You never asked?" She looked away, embarrassed, but not defensive. Just quiet, understanding. For once. Gregory helped clear the dishes, and as we stood by the sink, he said softly, "I used to think I was ahead, like life was a race and I was winning. But you were playing on a different field. I didn't see it." I dried a plate, smiled. "It was never about beating anyone. I just wanted to be seen." He nodded. "You are now." Later that night, Dad raised his glass. His hand trembled slightly, but his voice didn't. "To Colonel Natalie Williams, who didn't just take a different path, but proved it could lead to something extraordinary. We're proud of you. And there it was. Not validation, but something better. Peace. Because by then, I didn't need their respect to feel whole. But hearing it stitched something old and torn back together. I raised my glass in return. For the first time, our laughter around the table felt easy, genuine, not earned by meeting expectations but by breaking them. The real victory wasn't the uniform or the title. It wasn't even the billion-dollar contract. It was choosing my path when no one believed in it and walking it anyway, until it became undeniable, until they had to look again. Not all family stories end like this. Some people never come around. But if you've ever been told you're wasting your potential or made to feel invisible in your own home, know this: your path doesn't have to make sense to anyone but you. And sometimes, the loudest "I'm proud of you" is the one you whisper to yourself after years of being underestimated. If that's you, share your story in the comments. Let others know they're not alone. And if you believe in the power of proving them wrong without losing who you are, like, subscribe, and remind someone this week: your path is valid, even when they don't see it, especially then.